My father gave my childhood bedroom to a woman I had never met, just 2 weeks after meeting her. One day, it was still mine, filled with memories of my late mother. The next, it was lavender walls, floral curtains, and a stranger's perfume clinging to every corner. I walked in with groceries and found her lounging on my old quilt, flipping through a magazine like she'd always belonged there. He told me to be more welcoming, that she was his future. Then she told me I could sleep in the basement until I found somewhere else to go. I wish that were the worst of it, but what she took next wasn't just a room. It was something I can never forgive. My father gave my childhood bedroom to a woman I had never met just 2 weeks after meeting her. That was the first blow. One moment, I was making him dinner in the kitchen, laughing over a broken pepper grinder. And the next, I was opening my bedroom door to find it completely changed. Gone were the pale blue walls my mom and I painted together when I was 10, the oak bookshelf my grandfather built, and the tiny pencil marks on the closet door measuring my height through the years. In their place, lavender walls, a vanity table, silk pillowcases, and a woman named Clarissa in my bed. She looked up from a magazine like she had every right to be there. No guilt, no awkwardness, just a lazy smile and a tone that dripped sugar when she said, "You must be Lydia." I was frozen. I could hear my father in the hallway, humming, "Not a care in the world." I asked Clarissa what she was doing in my room. She said, "Oh, Hank said you wouldn't mind." Hank, not Dad. Hank. When I confronted him in the hallway, I wasn't screaming. I wasn't crying. Just confused. Just hurt. He said she needed space and that I should be more understanding. After all, I was 25, and it was time I had my own place anyway. I reminded him that it was my place, that Mom left the house to both of us, that I paid the property taxes, did the grocery shopping, cooked every meal, managed the repairs, and covered the utilities when his job got shaky during the pandemic. He blinked like none of that mattered. "Clarissa's been through a lot," he said. "She deserves a fresh start." And I didn't. That night, I slept on the pull-out couch in the den. Clarissa's little dogs barked at every creak and shuffled in their designer carriers like they were too good for the floor. I lay there listening to her laugh with my father, listening to my father say things like, "You're a light in this house," and "I'm so glad we found each other." The next day, my mother's portraits were gone. I found them in the garage, wrapped in a plastic tarp behind a stack of boxes labeled Clarissa's fall wardrobe. I knew then this wasn't going to stop. Clarissa didn't just move in. She took over. My kitchen labels were removed. The pantry was reorganized. My dog, Baxter, was banned from the living room because he sheds too much. And every time I tried to reclaim something of mine, she acted like I was inconveniencing her. Dad. He watched from the sidelines, said I was being dramatic. I started documenting things, not out of paranoia, but clarity. Gaslighting has a way of making you question reality. I took pictures of changes, made copies of the will. I reread every line my mother had carefully outlined when she was battling cancer, fighting to leave something meaningful behind for us. But Clarissa had something else planned. It came to a head one Sunday morning. I came back from a weekend visiting my best friend and found locks changed. I thought it was a mistake until I called Dad. And he calmly said, "We needed some space. Clarissa's therapist suggested it." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood there, holding my grocery bags, wondering how the man who once carried me through night terrors and flu seasons could so easily cast me out. I told him I was coming in. He said if I tried, they'd call the cops. So I walked away. Not forever, not quietly, but carefully, because if Clarissa wanted a war, she was going to get one, and I had the law, the paperwork, and every ounce of my mother's fire in me. And that's when the real story began. The silence in the house after my father left was the kind that sinks into your bones, thick, heavy, almost accusatory. Moxie padded quietly behind me as I wandered the hallways, taking in what used to be familiar and had somehow become unfamiliar in just a few short weeks. The pictures were still back on the walls, my mother's smile, my grandparents' wedding photo, the faded black and white of my great-grandfather in uniform. But it all felt like it had been tainted. Like they were watching, waiting to see what I'd do next. I hadn't expected it to unravel this fast. I thought I had more time. But that's the thing about people like Steph and her girls. They don't slip in like house guests. They invade, they conquer, and they almost won. I went into the kitchen and saw the ceramic cookie jar my mom had kept on the counter for as long as I could remember. It was chipped at the lid, the glaze worn thin where she used to tap it with her wedding ring. I opened it, still empty, just like she used to keep it when we were both trying to cut back on sugar. I smiled. But it didn't last long. I could still hear Steph's voice echoing in the back of my mind, calling my mother useless. That was the moment something snapped in me, and I don't regret it. That woman didn't just disrespect the woman who raised me. She did it in her home. In the same house where my mom cried when I got my first C, where she taught me to dance barefoot in the living room when I didn't get invited to prom, where she held me when the world felt too sharp. I'd been holding my breath ever since the day she died. Now, I was finally breathing again. But the fallout had only just begun. I got a text from Dad that night. Just 4 words. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. Instead, I went to the garage and started pulling down the storage boxes Mom had labeled years ago in her delicate cursive. I needed to feel close to her, closer than a picture on the wall. One box was labeled for when she's ready. I almost didn't open it, but something in me said this was the moment. Inside was a worn, leather-bound journal. The pages were soft, edges curled. It was a collection of letters, one for every milestone she thought she'd miss. My graduation, my first job, my wedding day, becoming a mother. There, tucked in the very back, was one simply marked when he remarries. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. Her handwriting was smaller here, tighter, like she'd been holding back tears. "Sweetheart, if you're reading this, it means your father has found someone new. I hope she is kind. I hope she treats you with the care you deserve. But if she ever tries to erase me or push you out, you stand your ground. This house is yours. Your memories are yours. And you are not alone, even when it feels like it." I cried for a long time after that. Not the soft, graceful kind of crying you see in movies, the ugly kind, the kind that leaves you breathless and aching. I didn't care. I needed it. By morning, I had made my decision. I called Amy, Mom's old lawyer. She still remembered me, told me she'd been waiting for this call since the obituary ran in the paper. Said she had a folder in her drawer labeled with my name. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry again. I just need to know. I told her, "Is there anything they can do? Any loophole?" Amy was firm. "The house is yours. The will is airtight. But you'll want to give them 30 days to avoid trouble. I'll draft the notice. 30 days. It felt both too short and too long. I planned dinner with Dad for that Saturday. Just the 2 of us. Or so I thought. When I opened the front door, it wasn't just him. Steph and the twins were standing there too, all dressed like they were meeting royalty. My jaw clenched. This was supposed to be between us. I said quietly, Dad looked sheepish. They wanted to come, to work things out. Steph pushed past him like she'd already won the argument. Let's not make this more dramatic than it has to be. I didn't even sit down. I handed my father the envelope. This is the formal notice. You have 30 days. After that, you are no longer welcome here. Steph's jaw dropped. You can't do that. Oh, but I can, I said calmly. And I have. Dad tried to step in, offering therapy, compromise, excuses, but I'd heard it all before. I looked him in the eyes and asked one question. Are you staying or going? He didn't answer right away, but his silence was answer enough. I turned and walked away, the weight of generations behind me. And somehow, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I really did. I made chamomile tea, put on that rain sounds playlist, even crawled under the weighted blanket my mother gave me the Christmas before she died. But nothing could settle the whirlwind in my chest. My mind kept replaying Steph's words, her smugness, her gall, and worse, Dad's silence, his face in that moment, pinched and hesitant, like a man who didn't know whose side he should be on. I was still awake at sunrise, sitting on the edge of my bed in my flannel robe. Moxie curled tightly at my feet. She hadn't left my side since the screaming match the day before. Smart dog. She knew something had broken. By 7 a.m. I'd drafted a message to Amy, my mom's old lawyer, and asked for an emergency meeting. I didn't want to make things ugly. I just wanted to know where I stood. Could they contest the will? Could Steph or her daughters lay any claim to this house? To the life my mom built? Amy responded fast. She always did. She told me to come by the office that afternoon, bring any paperwork I had, and we'd talk through everything. I felt the smallest sliver of relief cut through the dread. At least I'd be doing something. At least I wasn't just waiting for the next invasion. When I stepped into Amy's office, it was like walking into a memory. The same blue armchairs, the same glass candy dish on the reception counter, filled with those strawberry-wrapped hard candies my mom loved. Amy was older now, gray at the temples, softer around the eyes, but still sharp, still steady. She welcomed me with a hug. I was wondering when you'd come see me, she said softly. Your mom would have wanted you to. I handed her the file of documents. Everything Mom left will... Title. That ironclad agreement we all signed back then. Dad included. Amy flipped through it slowly, her reading glasses low on her nose. Then she looked up and smiled. Not warmly, but confidently. They don't have a leg to stand on. The words dropped into my gut like bricks, weighty, solid, strangely comforting. She went on to explain that the house was mine, sole ownership, legally untouchable unless I chose to gift or sell it. And we'd all signed documents promising we wouldn't challenge it. Even Dad, especially Dad. If they don't leave willingly, we can start formal eviction, she added. But I'd advise giving them notice first. 30 days. Keep it clean. Keep it legal. I nodded. And my dad, that's your call, she said. But remember, you're not kicking him out. You're making a boundary. That's different. Boundaries. That word felt foreign, like a luxury I hadn't let myself afford. That night, I told Dad we needed to talk. Just the two of us. I asked him to meet me for dinner someplace neutral. I even picked his favorite diner across town, hoping the pancakes and bottomless coffee might soften whatever came next. But when I walked in, he wasn't alone. Steph and the twins were already there, seated at our table like they'd been summoned. Lizzie was flipping through her phone. Lexi had sunglasses on indoors. Steph looked like she was prepared to give a TED Talk. I felt the heat rise in my neck. I almost turned around and walked out. But then I remembered Amy's words. Boundaries. So I sat. Dad, I said calmly. This was supposed to be between us. He looked sheepish. They just wanted to talk. Maybe we can figure things out. Together. Steph wasted no time. We're family now. Honey, we all have to coexist. I didn't flinch. I'd practiced this. I spoke to Amy. I said evenly, the house is mine. You all have 30 days to move out. Steph's mouth dropped open like a cartoon villain. Excuse me, you heard me. I said, I've let things slide. I've been disrespected. My mother's memory has been trampled on. No more. 30 days. Lizzie started to protest. Something about finals and stress. Lexi mumbled a complaint about how unfair it was. I just looked at Dad. This is your choice. I told him, you can stay here with me, or you can go with them, but you can't have both. And if you go, I need you to understand I won't be reaching out. I won't be waiting. He blinked hard, his jaw clenched. He looked down at his plate like it might offer answers. Then he whispered, You'd really cut me out. I leaned forward, my voice steady but aching. You already did. And just like that, the waitress arrived with refills. No one spoke. The air between us was heavier than ever. But in that moment, something shifted in me. I didn't need his answer. Not really. Because for the first time, I wasn't begging to be chosen. I was choosing myself, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. 2 weeks passed before I heard from him again. It was a text. Just a single sentence. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Coffee cooling in my hand. The morning sun casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. I didn't respond, not right away. I wasn't ready. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the silence that followed my decision. But later that night, after the world had quieted down, I texted back, only if it's just us. The next day, my father showed up on my porch, alone. No Lisa, no Megan, no trace of their matching luxury bags or those ridiculous dogs that barked like sirens every time the wind shifted. He looked tired, older somehow, like the shine had worn off whatever dream he thought he was chasing. He didn't hug me. He didn't smile. He just nodded and followed me into the kitchen, where I poured 2 cups of coffee and said nothing for a while. Neither of us spoke. I didn't know how to handle it, he finally said, voice low, eyes on the chipped edge of his mug. I didn't know how to be in love with someone new and still be the father you needed. I said nothing. I let the words hang in the air, unfinished and raw. I thought maybe if I just kept the peace, it'd all work itself out. He continued, but that's not how things work, is it? Not with families? No. I said, it's not. He looked up then, and for a split second, I saw the man who used to build tree houses with me in the backyard, who made my lunch for school after Mom passed away, who stood in the rain for every piano recital I ever had. I let her disrespect your mother. He said quietly, I let them all disrespect you, and I didn't stop it. Still, I didn't speak. I wanted to know where this was going, whether this was guilt or something deeper. I moved in with them, he said, because I thought if I didn't, I'd lose them. But now I realize I lost you instead. I set down my mug. You didn't lose me. Dad, you chose them. There's a difference. He blinked, and I saw the weight of those words settle in his chest. He nodded slowly. You're right. Then silence again. Thick. Uncomfortable. I miss you, he whispered. I swallowed hard. You miss what's easy. He didn't argue. Maybe because deep down, he knew I was right. I thought maybe we could try. He said, try to rebuild. Just us. Sundays. Maybe dinner. No Lisa. No drama. Just us. It sounded like peace.
But I wasn't ready to believe it. "Why now?" I asked. He hesitated. "Because I realized the house isn't what made us family. You did. Your mom did. And I let someone else poison that." There it was. The truth I'd been aching to hear but too afraid to ask for. I leaned back in my chair. "Okay, Sundays. But if you ever bring her around again, I won't answer the door." He nodded. "Understood." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But something shifted in that moment. A brittle, fragile bridge started to form between us. Not sturdy yet, but enough to step onto. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Moxie rested her head on my lap, sensing something I couldn't name. That night, I dug out the old photo albums again. Not to rearrange, not to correct what had been ruined, but to remember, to hold on to what mattered. And maybe, just maybe, to make room for something new. The next Sunday, he showed up right on time. No flowers, no apologies, no pretense, just him. And for the first time in months, we sat across from each other, sharing a meal like father and daughter. I told myself I could handle that. One Sunday at a time, Sunday dinners became a quiet ritual. We didn't speak much of the past, and I didn't press. He brought groceries sometimes, always the kind he remembered I liked as a kid. We ate simple meals, and slowly, the air between us stopped buzzing with guilt and started settling into something livable, not warm, not whole, but steady. But outside of those Sundays, my life had changed. I had changed, and I was learning not to apologize for that. Steph tried calling me once. I let it ring until it stopped. No voicemail, no second attempt. Maybe she got the message, or maybe she was just waiting for another opportunity. Either way, I didn't lose sleep over it. I had installed cameras around the property, changed all the locks, and tightened my boundaries like a fortress. I wasn't afraid anymore, just vigilant. A few weeks after one of our dinners, Dad asked if he could show me something. He handed me an envelope thick, with his handwriting on the front. I opened it, expecting more legal nonsense or documents, but inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages long. He'd rewritten his will. In it, he split everything between me and a local charity that supported cancer patients. Nothing for Steph, nothing for her daughters. He explained, in soft words and heavy lines, that he wanted to correct his course not because I'd asked, but because he'd finally realized where his heart had always belonged, to my mother, to me, to the woman he'd raised, not the chaos he'd welcomed. I didn't cry while I read it, not even when he wrote, "If I could sit down with your mother today, I'd ask her to forgive me for forgetting what home was." But later that night, after he left, I stood in the hallway and stared at the picture of my mother above the stairs. I ran my fingers along the frame, and I whispered, "He's trying." That had to be enough. Life didn't suddenly turn into a fairy tale. The wounds didn't vanish. But I started to breathe easier. I met with contractors to restore the guest house behind the property, an old structure my grandfather built when the twins were just babies. I wasn't sure what I'd use it for yet. Maybe a creative studio, maybe a quiet escape, maybe nothing at all. But it felt like healing to invest in something mine again. Then came the wedding invitation. Lisa's daughter Lexi was getting married. Not only was it a fancy embossed card, but it came with a handwritten note from Steph herself. She wanted me to attend, said she hoped we could put the past behind us for the sake of the future, that I was family. After all, I set it down without finishing it, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed, not out of joy, but out of disbelief that they still believed I could be bought with politeness. I didn't RSVP, I didn't explain, I didn't need to. Instead, I spent that weekend repainting the upstairs hallway, soft eggshell white. just like it was when Mom was still alive. The same color she used because she said it caught the morning sun just right. I played her favorite record on repeat while I painted Sam Cooke. Scratchy and soulful. On the following Sunday, Dad noticed the change. "She would have liked this," he said softly. I nodded. "I know. He brought me a potted gardenia that day. Said Mom used to grow them near the back porch. I placed it by the window, and it bloomed within a week. And just like that, something shifted inside me. Not a grand moment, not a breakdown or epiphany, just stillness. A sense that the war had passed, that I had survived it, that, somehow, even with all the loss, I had managed to keep something sacred. Myself. The last time I saw Steph was at the grocery store. She looked straight through me like I wasn't there. But her eyes faltered just for a second, like she knew, like she understood. Finally, that she'd lost the battle she was never meant to win. I walked past her without a word, and that night, I slept better than I had in months. This house may have once been a battleground, but now, it was mine again. And not just because a will said so, because I stood up for it, because I protected it, because I protected myself. As spring turned into summer, the gardenia kept blooming. And every Sunday, Dad brought a new flower for the porch lilies, hydrangeas, even a few marigolds. We never talked much about the past, but in those silent gestures, I knew he remembered everything. And sometimes, that's enough. Some wounds don't bleed, but they linger quietly, shaping how we love, how we protect ourselves, and how we define home. This story reminds us that sometimes the hardest part isn't losing people. It's realizing they were never really on your side. For anyone who's ever had to choose peace over family, you are not alone. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are protection. They are love directed inward. As we get older, the pressure to keep the peace often outweighs the need to keep our dignity. But dignity matters, especially when it comes to protecting what those before us built, what we ourselves have preserved, and what we want to leave behind. Laura's story speaks to something deeply personal, how family isn't just blood, but behavior. How the people who truly love us don't demand, manipulate, or erase. They honor. If this story touched you, if you've ever had to reclaim your voice after being overlooked or pushed aside, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What did you take away from Laura's journey? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and turn on notifications so you never miss one. You're not alone, and your story matters.